why it's a great operating system and why you should try it. So let's start maybe with this this reflection about the history of computer science, or about administration in general, and this thing that there are some cycles that repeat themselves again and again and again. And I will be talking about some ideas today, and those ideas existed like 10, 20 years ago, and now with new tools we rediscovered them again. And it's quite amazing that we didn't took them picked them up before. So about me, I founded this company called Nicomeet, which is a French-based company. I also organized a conference called Polycon. I highly invite you. It's going to be the third time next year. It's going to be in Poznan. I also organized a conference called Drupal. It was organized in Poznan, in Budapest, Brno, and in Sao Paulo. I lived some time in Sao Paulo in Rio, and I happened to organize two first meetups about Docker there. It was quite an adventure together with Docker Incorporated. And FreeBSD. So it's a free Unix-like operating system. It's based on a BSD Unix. So there was this. The story is that some people bought from AT&T a license for Unix, real Unix system, and they started to develop their own at the Berkeley University, and that's how BSD came to life. And FreeBSD is a descendant of that heritage. FreeBSD was created in 1993. That was the first version, and the BSD was created in '76. So it's quite some time ago. What's different about FreeBSD and BSD family is that this operating system is like a whole package. It's not like Linux, because Linux is basically a kernel, and then you have distributions. So you have Debian, you have Ubuntu, and distribution is a way how we package things and which package manager we use. And it may vary. The opinions are different. Some people prefer different distributions. And when you know one type, it's not really obvious how to use the other one. So the cases for, like, on the one hand you have the Debian and Ubuntu, on the other hand you have Fedora, Red Hat. FreeBSD is different. It's developed differently. It's a kernel package system. The whole user land is developed together by the same people. And when you get an upgrade, everything gets upgraded at the same time. So from the point of view of maintenance, it's much easier to use this system than Linux, simply, and Linux distributions. At the same time, FreeBSD is a very old system, so it's very stable. Another difference is that Linux is based on this, it's in licensing. So Linux is based on GPL, which means that it's copyleft, which means for business that if you do some adjustments to the system, you need to release the source code as open source. It's called copyleft. And with FreeBSD and other BSD operating system, you have BSD or MIT license, which means that when you do adjustments, when you do a patch, you don't have to release it as open source. You can sell it. So potentially you have you can build a business around this. So before we dive into great things about BSD, I would like to talk about some use cases. So the first one is obvious one, OS X, the one we use. And OS X is mostly based on FreeBSD. That's why it's so easy to develop, and for developers it's a nice tool because we have the same tool set than on Linux and other Unix-like systems. The other one is PlayStation 3 and 4. The operating system, let's say, that was used there is based also on FreeBSD. And in those both cases, OS X and PlayStation, they choose FreeBSD because it's stable. It's like rock solid because it's an old operating system. What's also different is the way how the system is built. So in Linux world, we have this benevolent dictator called Linus, who likes to use fuck and who wants to use the word fuck a lot, and who chooses how to took some commit patches from some people, and so it's like a very hierarchical way of developing system. It's not really open source in spirit. With FreeBSD is different. There's like a committee. Those are like mostly professors from Berkeley or any other universities, like computer science people that agree on something. So when they develop, it's more mature and it's more you can expect some results from that. It's not very chaotic as with Linux and the way Linux works. So as I said, FreeBSD is a very reliable system, and it's very secure. There is this another BSD system called OpenBSD, which is often used for routers or for firewalls because of the security promise they give. And also they have extremely performant network stack. Recently there was this Facebook advertisement. They looked for someone who could join the team and develop a set of patches or adjustments to Linux to match the performance of FreeBSD. So people are aware that Linux is not really there in terms of performance on a very low level. FreeBSD is mostly used for things like mail servers, web servers, DNSs, and in special cases like OpenBSD for example, firewalls or routers. So the killer feature, the first killer feature of FreeBSD is this file system called Z file system. And the idea is very, it's not new, very interesting, is that it works like Git. So you have like snapshot of the system. So you don't have to, when you like, let's imagine we activate this feature for a home directory. And when the user changes something in the home directory, new snapshot is generated, and the snapshot is very small, but the whole information is different because it's how he changed the file. But what's stored on the system is a very small amount of information, exactly as it works with Git. Another analogy is with this with functional programming. So, for example, in functional programming, you have this idea of immutable data structures, which uses structural sharing. So again, this is the same thing. It's that when you create a data structure in functional programming language, like Clojure, for example, you create a new value. So again, you create new values, and you may think, well, it's inefficient, but no, it's not. It's more efficient than if you mutate the thing, exactly as with Z file system. Z file system is different from other file systems because it uses, it has a block for checksum which is separated from the data itself. So it has this ability to self-heal. It can check data and check the checksums at the same time and compare those things through the tree of the file system. Another thing is that it uses copy and write. So there is when you write something on a disk, it wraps it into a transaction, and it writes on a different in a different block, always on a different block. So it means that when something goes wrong, it can always recover from the failure, which is important when you use it for production systems. Snapshot, I already talked about it. So you can easily activate this and snapshot the whole history, and you can always revert back and forward with it. Another thing is that it comes with a tool called Z-Pool, which makes pooled storage very easy. So you can create different RAID systems very easily, up to those crazy things like RAID 5 or something like that. And capacity. This is 128 bits file system, which means that it can store up to 256 quadrillion zettabytes, and 1 zettabyte is 1 billion terabytes. So it's a modern, it's built for the future. The second killer feature I really like about FreeBSD is this idea of jails. So it existed like for years and years, and then someone created LXC, and then someone created Docker based on that. So in FreeBSD you have Docker from like for 20 years already, I think, and it works, and it seems to be more secure, given recent like discoveries about Docker problems. Jails. Another killer feature is this hypervisor called BHIVE. I don't know how to spell it, how to pronounce it. And this is very modern alternative to KVM. So this is the same idea. It's considered to be type 2 hypervisor, which means that it's like more high level than the type 1, which is bare metal, like XM, for example. And what they did is that they focus only on modern architecture, on modern processors, on everything which is new. So they reduced the code greatly, and there is no this legacy code which needs to be used with KVM. And as a result, this hypervisor is very efficient. It's much more efficient than what exists today. And lastly, it runs on ARM architecture, and there is this Polish company called SemiHub which developed that. They are from Gdańsk, I think, and recently they built a FreeBSD version for this kind of architecture. What's more, I wrote a very small blog post. It's like 1 year ago, how to install FreeBSD on Hetzner. So I highly recommend you check this out, and that'll be all. Thanks. Questions?
Are you using it on production somewhere?
No, not yet, but I plan to. I don't have time to do it, but yeah, I would love to. I think it's gonna be better than what I like do right now. What's interesting is that there is this company WhatsApp, which was bought by Facebook for $19 billion, I think, something like that. And they use FreeBSD exclusively, and up to 300 million users, they only have like 50 servers or something like that, 50 FreeBSD servers. So the amount of servers compared to the user base, it's amazing how they managed that. And there is a presentation about this, and the guy says that it's because of FreeBSD. It's so stable, it's so reliable that yeah, you should use it in production. Other questions? Yeah.
I think it's very hard to compare performance and stability about operating systems, because it's very technical and research-like procedure to have meaningful information.
So you mean that because when you compare, for example, at the beginning I said that FreeBSD is developed as a whole, like everything is developed at once, not only the kernel but also the userland and utilities, and it's more performant because they check everything all together. You know, they see it because it's like done at once. But with Linux, you don't know who will like commit the patch or who will commit the tool for the distribution, how it's chosen, and this makes that there are bottlenecks. And it's not really about the rough performance, but also about how everything is developed and assembled together.
Yes, but at this moment there are more Linux servers than FreeBSD servers used, and I'm not talking about Linux is better, but it's hard to compare this, and I welcome anyone to compare Linux Linux and FreeBSD for one particular thing, like one web app or other utility.
Okay, that's fair enough. Other questions? Okay, so let me stop here. Oleg?
No więc tak, będę potrzebował komputer, żeby coś popisać.
Dobra, to